How does I to feel being the most useless one here? Everyone laughed. I smiled and said, how does I to feel when this useless one stops paying your bills? The moment I finished speaking, the room went silent at tea dinner. My sister mocked me. My name is Angela Perry, 30 war, a freelance financial analyst in Charleston, West Virginia. Single, no kids, just me and my work. Last month, at my parents' 36th wedding anniversary dinner, my sister's voice cut through the chatter like a blade. How does it feel being the most useless one here, Angela, with your pointless office job? Her smirk stung, and the table, my parents, her husband, cousins, burst into laughter. Their amusement burned years of being overlooked flashing before me. I could have stayed silent like always. Let her words sink in. Let them win. But something snapped. I leaned forward, meeting her gaze. How does it feel? I said, my voice calm but sharp, when this useless one stops paying your way. The room froze. Her smirk faltered, her eyes wide with shock. The laughter died, replaced by a heavy silence. What she stammered, but I didn't wait for her to recover. I stood my chair scraping and walked out, their stunned faces etched in my mind. For too long I'd carried their weight only to be mocked. That night, I decided they'd learn exactly what I'd done for them and what I'd stop doing. I was 14 when I first realized my family saw me as the fixer, the one who patched the cracks they pretended didn't exist. Growing up in Charleston, West Virginia, I learned early that love came with a price tag. My sister Leslie Perry, 2 years older, and always the louder one, was the family's pride, the one they pinned their hopes on. I was just Angela, the quiet kid who didn't make waves. But waves don't pay the bills. At 14, I got my first job bussing tables at a greasy diner off Kanawha Boulevard. The place reeked of burnt coffee and fryer oil, but every dollar I earned went straight to my savings. That winter, our power bill came due and my parents were short. I overheard my mom whispering to my dad about late notices piling up. Leslie was in high school, focused on cheerleading and boys oblivious to the stress. I wasn't. I handed over my savings, $300 scraped together from wiping tables and dodging rude customers. Angela, you don't have to. My mom said, her voice soft but strained. I shrugged it off, said it was fine. My dad took the money without a word. The lights stayed on, but no one mentioned my part. Leslie got new sneakers that month, flashing them at school like she'd earned them. By 16, it wasn't just the power bill. My dad's truck broke down, and he couldn't afford the repair. I dipped into my savings again, $400 to cover it. He patted my head, called me dependable, but never paid me back. My mom gave me a weak smile, saying, you're helping us so much. Leslie didn't notice, she was too busy planning prom. I kept working, picking up extra shifts, my hands raw from scrubbing dishes. Every paycheck felt like a lifeline, not for me, but for them. At 18, I was ready to escape. I'd earned a partial scholarship to a college in Boston, a chance to study finance, and build something for myself. I spent nights dreaming of city lights far from Charleston's weight, but then Leslie came home from her own college, drowning in student loan debt. She'd picked an expensive private school, assuming our parents would handle it. They couldn't. My dad sat me down, his voice heavy with expectation. Family comes first. Angela, he said. I knew what he meant. I gave up. The scholarship stayed in Charleston and enrolled at a local community college. My savings, $2,000 from waitressing, went to Leslie's loans. She graduated with a degree she never used while I juggled night classes and 2 jobs. Leslie never said thank you. She'd breeze through the house laughing about parties or her latest boyfriend while I counted pennies to cover textbooks. My mom would pat my shoulder, murmuring, you're a good girl, Angela. My dad just nodded like it was my job to keep things together. They leaned on me, but never saw me. To them, I was the responsible one. The one who fixed problems, not the one who had dreams. When Leslie got married at 25, I paid for her kids' school supplies, notebooks, backpacks, even a graphing calculator for her eldest. She'd call me to complain about money, then show up to Sunday dinners with her perfect family, never mentioning my help. My parents beamed at her stories. Her kids running around while I sat quietly, my contributions invisible. Once, when their water heater broke, I covered the $800 repair. My dad said, good job, Angela, but it felt like an afterthought. My mom stayed silent, her eyes on Leslie's kids. Those years shaped me. I learned numbers, how to stretch a dollar, how to balance a budget. By my mid-20s, I'd turned that skill into a career as a financial analyst working freelance for tech startups. My paychecks were steady enough to live comfortably, but I never stopped covering for my family. A late phone bill here, a car repair there. Small things they never questioned. Leslie settled into her role as the perfect daughter, the one who showed up with a smile. I was the one who made sure those dinners happened quietly, paying for groceries when my parents fell short. Looking back, I don't know why I kept doing it. Maybe I thought it would earn their respect. Maybe I believed family meant carrying their burdens, but every time I handed over money, I felt a piece of myself slip away. Leslie's laughter at those dinners. My dad's gruff approval of her stories. My mom's silence, it all stung. They didn't see the late nights I spent working the dreams I'd buried, the life I'd put on hold. They saw Leslie's charm, her kids, her life. I was just Angela, the one who paid. That night at the anniversary dinner, when my sister called me useless, those years hit me like a wave. I wasn't just the quiet kid anymore. I was done being invisible. I'd given enough and they'd taken it all without a glance. What happened next wasn't just about that night, it was about every sacrifice they'd ignored, every dollar they'd taken for granted. I was ready to show them what useless really meant. 1 week before my parents' 36th anniversary dinner, I was burning the midnight oil in my Charleston apartment, hunched over my laptop, crunching numbers for a tech startup's budget. The clock read 11:47 p.m. My eyes stinging from hours of spreadsheets. My phone buzzed, Leslie's name flashing on the screen. Late-night calls from her always meant trouble, but I answered, steeling myself. "Angela, I need your help." Leslie said, her voice a mix of charm and urgency, like she was selling me something. "The online clothing store's finally taking off. I need $50,000 to expand inventory. You're good with money, right? You can make it happen." Her tone assumed I'd say yes, like I always had. I gripped the phone, my jaw tightening. She didn't even ask how I was. $50,000, I said, keeping my voice steady. "That's a lot, Leslie. Why now?" She laughed, sharp and dismissive. "Oh, come on, Angela. You sit in front of a computer all day shuffling papers or whatever. It's not like you're saving lives. Just help me out. It's for the family business." Her words cut deep, reducing my career years of late nights, high-stakes deals, keeping startups afloat to a joke. I'd built a name as a financial analyst, but to her, I was nothing. "I can't," I said, my tone firm. "That's not how it works. I don't have that kind of cash lying around." There was a pause then. Her voice turned icy. "You're so selfish, Angela. You've always been like this, hoarding your little paychecks while the rest of us actually care about the family. You think you're better than us, don't you?" Her accusation hit like a punch, but it wasn't new. She'd always painted me as the outsider, the one who didn't fit her perfect family picture. Selfish, I snapped, my patience fraying. "You don't know what I've done for this family, Leslie. You have no idea." My heart pounded, memories of my teenage years, emptying my savings, giving up my dreams, flooding back. I wanted to lay it all out. Tell her every sacrifice, but I held back. "Not yet." "What's that supposed to mean?" She shot back. "You're always so cryptic, acting like you're some big shot. You know what, forget it. I don't need your help. I'll figure it out without you. Like always." Her voice dripped with contempt, each word a jab at my worth. She hung up the line, going dead before I could respond. I stared at the phone, my knuckles white from gripping it. Selfish. Useless. Better than us. Her words echoed, each one a spark igniting years of resentment. I let her barbs slide before, told myself it didn't matter. But this time something snapped. Her call wasn't just about money, it was about control, about keeping me in my place. She thought she could mock my work, demand my money, and I'd still play along. She was wrong. I set the phone down, my hands trembling. For years I'd been the one they leaned on, the one who fixed their problems. Leslie's perfect life. Her kids, her house, her so-called family business rested on my shoulders. But she didn't see it. None of them did. I wasn't just the quiet sister anymore. I was done playing their game. I opened my laptop again, not to the startup's budget, but to my personal accounts. I scrolled through years of transactions, payments I'd made, debts I'd covered, all for them. Every number was a piece of my life I'd given away. Leslie thought my job was a joke, but those figures told a different story. They showed how much I'd carried, how much I'd hidden. I leaned back, my mind racing. The anniversary dinner was in 7 days. Leslie would be there all smiles, playing the perfect daughter, dismissing me as the family's afterthought. But I wasn't going to that dinner to nod along. I was going to show all of them what I was really worth. I clicked into my banking app, checking my savings, my investments. I wasn't just prepared, I was ready. Leslie's words had lit a fire, and at that dinner I'd make sure they felt the heat. The night of my parents' anniversary dinner, I stepped into their Charleston home, my stomach knotted with resolve. The dining room hummed with voices, cousins, Leslie's husband, a few family friends all gathered around the long table. Leslie stood at the center, her laughter sharp as she boasted about her online clothing store's success. My dad nodded his gruff approval, unwavering. My mom passed plates, her smile soft but distant. I took my seat quietly, hands folded, my nerves steeling for what I knew was coming. Leslie's gaze flicked to me, her smile turning sly. "How does it feel being the most useless one here, Angela, with your pointless office job?" Her words cut through the chatter like a knife. The table erupted in laughter. My dad's low chuckle, my cousin's giggles, her husband's smug grin. My mom looked away, her smile fading. The sting was sharp, familiar, but tonight, it fueled me. Leslie thrived on putting me down, and they all played along. I could have stayed silent like I had for years, swallowing the hurt, but not this time. I leaned forward, locking eyes with Leslie across the table. "How does it feel?" I said, my voice steady but razor sharp. "When this useless one stops paying your bills." The laughter died instantly. Forks froze. Leslie's smirk vanished, her face paling. The room fell silent, every eye fixed on me. "What are you talking about?" Leslie stammered, her voice trembling. She glanced at her husband, then back at me, searching for a way out. "Let's be clear," I said, standing slowly, my chair scraping the floor. "The utility bills I paid when your account was overdrawn. The tuition for your kids' private school, 3 years, $20,000. The loan I took out to save your store from bankruptcy in 2022. I've been holding this family together, Leslie, while you laugh at my pointless job." My dad's jaw clenched, his knuckles white around his glass. "Angela, that's enough," he said, his voice low, authoritative, but I wasn't stopping. "No, Dad," I snapped, turning to him. "It's not enough. It's never been enough for you." I looked at my mom, her eyes glistening, her hands frozen on a platter. "Mom, you knew. You both did. And you let me carry it all." Leslie's husband shifted, his smugness gone, replaced by unease. The cousin stared wide-eyed, unsure where to look. Leslie's face flushed red. "You're lying." She spat, her voice cracking. "You don't do anything for us. You're just making this up to look important." I smiled, cold and unyielding. "Check your bank statements, Leslie. Look at the transfers from my account. The loan papers with my signature. I'm done carrying you, all of you." I swept my gaze across the table, meeting each pair of eyes. My dad's stern frown, my mom's trembling silence. The cousins' awkward glances. They'd taken my money, my time, my dreams, and given me nothing but mockery. Leslie tried to laugh it off, but it came out weak, desperate. "You're pathetic, Angela. Throwing this in our faces like some hero." Her voice shook, betraying her. "Pathetic," I said, stepping back. "I'm the one who kept your lights on, your kids in school, your business alive. And I'm done." I turned to the door, my heart pounding but steady. Leslie called after me, her voice shrill. "You can't just walk out like this." I didn't look back. The front door clicked shut behind me, their stunned silence ringing in my ears. For years I'd been their invisible lifeline, paying for their lives while they belittled mine. I'd given everything, my savings, my scholarship, my future, and they'd laughed. That night, I drew the line. They thought they knew me, but they had no idea what I'd done or what I was about to do next. 3 days after the dinner party, I sat at my desk in my Charleston apartment, staring at my banking app. I'd made a decision: no more handouts. For years, I'd been quietly transferring money to Leslie's business account, $2,000 a month, to keep her online clothing store afloat. After her useless jab at the dinner, I was done. I logged into my bank, canceled the recurring transfer, and hit confirm. My heart raced, but it felt right. Let her feel the weight for once. The fallout came faster than I expected. By the next evening, my phone lit up with Leslie's frantic texts. "Suppliers are calling. We can't pay them." "What did you do?" I didn't respond. The following morning, my inbox had a string of voicemails. Leslie's voice shrill and panicked, demanding I fix it. Then the buzzer to my apartment sounded sharp and insistent. I checked the intercom. Leslie's voice crackled through. Angela, let us in. Now. My dad's gruff tone followed, urging her to calm down. I pressed the button, bracing myself. The door opened to Leslie, her face flushed with anger, and my dad, his expression hard, hands in his pockets. They stormed into my small living room, the air thick with tension. Leslie didn't sit, her arms crossed tightly. You cut me off? She snapped, her voice shaking. The store's a mess, Angela. Suppliers are threatening to pull out. You need to fix this. I leaned against the kitchen counter. My arms folded, meeting her glare. Fix it. I said, my tone calm, but sharp. I've been fixing your messes for years, Leslie. I'm done. My dad stepped forward, his voice heavy. Angela, this isn't the time for games. Your sister's business is struggling. You've got the money. Put it back. His words carried the same old expectation, as if my role was to obey. I laughed, short and bitter. Put it back. Dad, you don't know what I've been doing. I walked to my desk, pulled out a folder of documents, and dropped it onto the coffee table with a thud. Look at this. Leslie hesitated, her eyes narrowing, then grabbed the folder. She flipped through it. Bank statements, legal contracts, ownership papers. Her hands shook as she read. My dad leaned in his brow, furrowing. What's this? He asked, his voice low, uncertain. That, I said, pointing to the papers, proves I own 60% of Leslie's store. In 2015, it was on the brink of collapsed creditors hounding you, accounts frozen. I stepped in, negotiated with the bank, and put in $40,000 of my own money to save it. In return, I got majority ownership. You didn't know, did you? Leslie's face went pale, the papers crinkling in her grip. This isn't true, she stammered. You never said anything. You're making this up to look important. Making it up, I shot back, stepping closer. I saved your business, Leslie, while you mocked me. I've been pouring money into your store every month, $2,000 like clockwork. And you didn't even notice until I stopped. My dad's face reddened, his jaw tight. Angela, you don't throw this in our faces, he said, his voice rising. We're family. You help without waving it around like some trophy. Family, I said, my voice cutting through. Family doesn't treat the one paying their bills like garbage. Family doesn't demand more while giving nothing back. I turned to Leslie. You begged for $50,000 last week. I said no, and I meant it. I'm done bailing you out. Leslie's eyes flashed with fury. You're pathetic, Angela, she spat, holding this over me like you're some big shot. You sit in this sad apartment crunching numbers while I'm building something real. Real? I said, my voice cold steady. Your real business would be gone without me. Those papers prove it. I could sell my 60% tomorrow and walk away. Good luck running your store then. My dad raised a hand, his tone sharp. Enough. Angela, you're tearing this family apart. Stop this now. No, Dad? I said, locking eyes with him. I've been holding it together, and I'm done. The room went silent, the truth hanging heavy. Leslie clutched the folder, her face a mix of shock and rage. My dad stared, his expression hard, but he didn't speak. I pointed to the door. You came here asking for more. You're not getting it. Get out. Leslie opened her mouth, but no words came. My dad grabbed her arm, muttering, We'll deal with this later. They left, the door slamming behind them. I stood alone, my heart pounding, but my resolve unshaken. I'd shown them the truth, and I wasn't finished yet. 5 days after I kicked Leslie and my dad out of my apartment, I sat alone at my desk, replaying their stunned faces. Showing them my 60% stake in Leslie's store had shaken them, but their silence burned more than their words. They hadn't acknowledged a single thing I'd done. Not the money, not the sacrifices. I wasn't done. I needed them to face the truth, to see the years I'd carried their burdens in silence. I grabbed a folder of documents, drove to my parents' house in Charleston, and knocked on their door. My heart steady but heavy with resolve. My mom opened the door. Her face, pale, eyes avoiding mine. Angela, she said softly, stepping aside. I walked into their living room where Leslie sat on the couch, arms crossed, her expression a mix of anger and defiance. My dad stood by the window, his back stiff, his silence heavy. The air was thick with tension, like a storm waiting to break. I set the folder on the coffee table and sat down facing them. "I'm here because you need to understand," I said, my voice calm but unyielding. In 2015, Leslie's store was collapsing. Creditors were calling daily, threatening to shut it down. I didn't just write a check for $40,000. I spent weeks negotiating with the bank, restructuring your debt, meeting suppliers to delay payments. I used my own savings money I'd worked years to earn. That's how I got 60% ownership. I did it to keep this family together. Leslie's eyes narrowed, her lips tight. "You keep bringing that up?" She snapped, her voice sharp. "You're just rubbing it in our faces. You didn't have to humiliate me at the dinner or throw those papers at us in your apartment. You're making this about you, making it about me," I said, leaning forward, my voice rising. "Leslie, I kept your store alive while you called me useless. I paid your utility bills, your kids' tuition, and never asked for anything. All I'm asking now is for you to own up to it. Say it. Acknowledge what I've done." My dad turned, his face hard, his voice low. "Angela, you're making this worse. You're wrecking this family with your need to be right. We don't need this drama." "Drama?" I said, my tone sharp, cutting through the room. "Dad, I've been the one holding us together. When Leslie's store was failing, I didn't just give money. I met with the bank manager, reworked payment plans, and took on the risk of losing everything. I did it because I thought it mattered to you, to all of you." I opened the folder, pulling out emails from 2015 bank statements and the signed ownership contract. "This is the proof. Look at it." My mom reached for the papers, her hands trembling. She scanned the emails, my late-night messages to the bank, begging for extensions, promising payments. Her eyes glistened, but she stayed silent. Leslie didn't move, her gaze fixed on the floor, her jaw tight. My dad glanced at the documents, then looked away, his expression unreadable. "You don't get it," Leslie said, her voice shaking with anger. "You're not the hero here, Angela. You're breaking us apart, throwing this in our faces like we owe you everything. You're the one wrecking this family." I stood, my hands clenched, my heart pounding. "Wrecking the family. Leslie, I've been the one keeping it afloat. I gave up my own plans, my savings, my time, my dreams because I cared. All I want is for you to see it. Say it. Acknowledge what I've done." My mom finally spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "Angela, we didn't know. Why didn't you tell us sooner?" Her words stung, more question than apology. "I shouldn't have had to, Mom," I said, my throat tight with frustration. "You should have seen it. You all should have." I turned to my dad, his silence louder than Leslie's accusations. "Dad, you've let her treat me like this for years. Say something." He shook his head, his voice gruff. "You've said enough, Angela. You're tearing us apart with this." His words hit like a blow, but I held my ground. I gathered the papers, my hands steady, despite the ache in my chest. "I came here for the truth," I said, looking at each of them. "If you can't face it, that's on you." I walked to the door, their silence heavy behind me. I'd laid out the truth, every dollar, every sleepless night, every sacrifice. If they wouldn't see it, I'd make sure they felt it. This wasn't the end. 4 days after leaving my parents' house, their accusations calling me the one tearing the family apart still burned like embers under my skin. I sat in my apartment trying to focus on work emails when my phone buzzed, slicing through the silence. Leslie's name lit up the screen. I hesitated, my stomach twisting, then answered, bracing myself for a confrontation. "Angela," Leslie said, her voice sharp and cold. "I'm done with this. I want to buy back your 60% stake in my store. Name your price and let's end this now." I leaned back, gripping the phone. "You think I'd sell Leslie? I saved your store $40,000 of my own money, months of begging creditors to give you a chance. You signed the contract in 2015. Those shares are mine. You're holding them over me." She snapped, her tone rising. "You act like you're the hero, but you're choking my business. Sell the shares, or I'll make sure you regret it. Regret it." I said, my voice steady, but sharp. "I earned those shares when I bailed you out. If you want them, you'll have to deal with me as a partner." Leslie laughed, bitter and cold. A partner. You're a leech, Angela. I'm offering you a way out. Take it, or this gets ugly. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with another call, my dad. I put Leslie on hold and answered. Angela, he said, his voice heavy. Your mom's a mess. This fight over the store is breaking us. Sell Leslie the shares. It's the only way to fix this. I closed my eyes, the weight of his words pressing down. Dad, I've been fixing things for years. Her bills, her kids' tuition, your mortgage. I saved her store, and now I'm the bad guy. I'm not selling. You're being stubborn, he said. Frustration creeping in. Think about the family. Your mom can't handle this. Sell the shares, Angela, and we can move on. For a moment, I considered it. Selling would mean freedom. No more fights. No more Leslie's resentment. No more guilt trips from my dad. I could walk away. Let her sink or swim with her failing store. I glanced at the folder, the contract staring back at me, signed and notarized. I remembered the nights I'd spent negotiating with banks. The stress of risking my savings while Leslie took the credit. Selling meant giving up the one thing I'd earned. The one piece of control I had. I switched back to Leslie. I'm not selling, I said, my voice firm. Those shares are mine. I saved your store, and you signed the contract. If you want to fight, go ahead. I've got the proof, every payment, every email. You're selfish, Leslie spat. You think you're better than us, waving that contract like a weapon. You'll see what happens. I hung up, my heart pounding, and turned back to my dad's call. Dad? I'm done, I said. I've carried this family long enough. If Leslie wants to fight, she's got one. I'm keeping my shares. Angela, you're breaking us, he said, his voice low. Your mom deserves better than this. Then tell Leslie to stop, I said, my throat tight. I'm not the one starting this. I ended the call, my hands trembling. I opened the folder, flipping through the documents, bank transfers, emails, the contract. They were my armor proof of what I'd done. I'd made my choice. I wasn't selling. The 60% stake was mine, and I'd fight to keep it no matter what it cost. 3 days after my heated calls with Leslie, I sat in my Charleston apartment, the silence heavy with the fallout of my decision. Refusing to sell my 60% stake in Leslie's store had drawn a hard line, and the quiet from my family, no texts, no calls, felt like a void swallowing me whole. I was sorting through work emails, trying to distract myself, when my phone buzzed. I need to talk, just you and me. My stomach knotted. I wanted to say no to protect myself from another plea to fix everything, but a small part of me clung to hope. Maybe she'd see my side this time. An hour later, I stood on the porch of my parents' house, the familiar creak of the floorboards stirring old memories. My mom opened the door, her face etched with exhaustion, her eyes soft but pleading. Thank you for coming, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. She led me to the living room, where we sat on the worn couch, surrounded by family photos that felt like ghosts of a happier time. She clasped her hands tightly, her gaze fixed on me. Angela, this fight with Leslie is breaking my heart. The store, the shares, it's tearing our family apart. Can't you sell them? For her? For all of us? I leaned back, my chest tightening with frustration and hurt. Mom, I saved her store $40,000 of my own money. Months of fighting off creditors who wanted to shut her down. I earned those shares. Why am I the villain for keeping what's rightfully mine? I know you helped my mom, said her voice, trembling, tears welling in her eyes. You've always been there, Angela, paying Leslie's bills, her kids' tuition, even our mortgage when we were struggling. You're so strong, but Leslie's drowning. The store is all she has. If you sell the shares, we could start over, be a family again. Start over, I said, my voice sharp, barely containing my anger. Mom, I've been holding this family together my whole life, paying for everything, bailing her out, sacrificing my own dreams. I've begged you to see it, to acknowledge what I've done, but you don't. Leslie's struggling because she can't run her business, not because I'm holding shares I earned. My mom reached for my hand, her fingers cold and trembling. I see it, Angela, she said, her voice cracking. I know you've given so much, but Leslie's my daughter too. I can't watch her lose everything. If you meet her halfway, sell the shares, we can fix this. I just want my girls back. I pulled my hand away, my throat tight with a mix of pain and resolve. Halfway, I've given everything, Mom. My savings, my time, my heart. I'm done begging for scraps of respect. Those shares are mine, and I'm keeping them. If Leslie wants to fight me, she can, but I'm not backing down. Angela, please. My mom said, tears streaming down her face as I stood. Don't walk away from us. I can't lose you both. I paused at the door, my heart heavy, but unyielding. I'm not walking away, Mom. You're choosing her side over mine. I've fought for this family my entire life, but I'm done carrying her mistakes. I walked out the door, closing softly behind me, the sound echoing in my chest. Back in my apartment, I sat in the quiet, my mom's pleas ringing in my ears. The family I'd poured everything into was crumbling, but I'd made my choice. I wasn't selling, and I wasn't bending. For the first time, I was fighting for myself, even if it meant letting go of the family I'd always tried to save. 2 weeks after walking out of my parents' house, I sat in my Charleston apartment, the silence heavier than ever. My refusal to sell my 60% stake in Leslie's store had shattered what little remained of our family, leaving only resentment in its wake. My phone buzzed with an email from Leslie's lawyer. A cold, formal letter accusing me of fraudulent inducement in the 2015 contract, claiming I'd coerced Leslie into signing and demanding I surrender the shares within 7 days or face a lawsuit. My heart pounded, but I'd expected this. Leslie was desperate to take back control, and this was her last resort. I opened my folder of 2015 documents, spreading them across the table. The contract was airtight, $40,000 of my savings months of negotiating with creditors, 60% ownership, all notarized. Bank records showed every payment I'd made to save Leslie's store, and emails detailed my efforts to keep her suppliers from walking away. These were my proof, my defense against her lies. I couldn't face this alone, so I called Karen Holt, a lawyer recommended by my best friend, Nicole Allen. I need you, I said, my voice steady. Leslie's suing me. Bring everything you have. Karen replied, her tone calm but firm. We'll meet tomorrow. As I hung up, a text from my mom appeared. Angela, this lawsuit is tearing us apart. Please talk to Leslie and end this. The words stung, her loyalty to Leslie cutting deeper than ever. I typed back, my fingers trembling with resolve. Mom, I've tried for years. Leslie's the one fighting me. I'm done fixing her mistakes. I hit send, the finality of it sinking in. The family I'd poured my life into was gone. The next morning, I sat in Karen's office, a small space with neat stacks of files and a window overlooking Charleston's skyline. I handed her the lawyer's letter and my documents. Karen, a sharp woman with a no-nonsense demeanor, read the accusation carefully. This is a scare tactic, she said, setting the letter down. Your contract is rock-solid, signed, notarized, backed by records. The fraud claim won't hold up in court. What's our next step? I asked, my voice steady despite the knot in my chest. We send a response, Karen said, leaning forward. We'll outline your contribution, cite the contract, and demand they drop the claim. If they push to court, we'll file for dismissal. You're in a strong position, Angela, but lawsuits mean legal fees and stress. Are you ready? More than ready, I said, my jaw tight. I've carried Leslie's failures for too long, her bills, her kids, her store. If she wants a fight, I'm not backing down. Karen nodded, jotting notes. I'll draft the letter today. Keep your documents safe and avoid contacting Leslie or your family. Back at my apartment, I texted Nicole. Leslie's suing, claiming fraud from 2015, hired Karen Holt. She says their case is weak. Nicole replied instantly. You're tougher than this, Angela. Leslie's desperate and you've got the truth. Call me if you need to talk. Her words steadied me, a reminder I wasn't entirely alone. Over the next 6 weeks, Karen prepared our case, her confidence unwavering. Leslie's lawyer refused to back down, and we ended up in a Charleston courtroom, a stark room with wooden benches and a stern judge. I sat beside Karen, my documents organized, as Leslie's lawyer argued I'd manipulated her into signing the 2015 contract. Karen countered with precision, presenting my bank records, emails, and the notarized contract. My client saved Ms. Perry's store with a legitimate investment, she said. These documents prove it. The judge ruled swiftly. The evidence is overwhelming, she said. The 2015 contract is valid. and the claim of fraudulent inducement is dismissed. Relief washed over me, but Leslie's glare from across the room cut like a knife. She'd lost, and her store remained under my majority ownership, a reality she couldn't escape. Outside the courthouse, Karen shook my hand. "You did it, Angela," she said. "The shares are yours, and they can't challenge this again. Thank you, Karen." I said, my voice thick with emotion. This was about more than shares. It was about my worth. That night, another text from my mom came. "Angela, why can't you let this go? We're still family." I stared at the screen, the ache of her words hitting hard. She'd never see my side, always choosing Leslie. I didn't reply. The lawsuit had cost me thousands in legal fees, weeks of sleepless nights, and the last remnants of my family. Leslie's store was faltering without my support, and my shares gave me control she despised. My dad hadn't spoken to me since our last call, and my mom's pleas felt hollow. I was alone, but I'd won. The documents, my sacrifices, my fight, they'd proven my value. I'd stood my ground, and though the loneliness stung, I felt a quiet pride. I was free from their expectations, ready to face whatever came next. 4 months after the courtroom victory, sunlight streamed into my Charleston apartment, painting soft gold across the hardwood floors. The lawsuit had secured my 60% stake in Leslie's store, but it had also ended my relationship with my family. Leslie hadn't said a word since the judge dismissed her fraud claim. My dad had cut off contact entirely, and my mom stopped texting after I stopped replying. The silence was sharp, but so was the clarity it brought. For the first time in years, I wasn't trapped in the cycle of fixing everything and everyone. I was free to build a life that belonged to me. For decades, I'd poured myself into my family. I'd paid Leslie's bills, covered her kids' tuition, sent money for our parents' mortgage, and put $40,000 of my savings into saving Leslie's store. That courtroom had been my final line in the sand, not just to keep the shares, but to take back my self-worth. Now I was rebuilding. I'd landed a role managing a marketing campaign for a local nonprofit focused on community arts. It wasn't easy work, but it was fulfilling. I was no longer cleaning up my sister's messes or smoothing over my parents' chaos. I was creating something that reflected who I was. Every evening I returned home with a clear head and a lighter heart. I started walking along the Battery, letting the salt air strip away the years of guilt and burden. I bought a small easel and started painting again, something I hadn't done in years. The strokes were clumsy at first, but each canvas felt like a tiny reclamation of the person I used to be before I let myself be buried under everyone else's expectations. Then came the invitation. An email from a colleague at the nonprofit arrived one night. They were organizing a women's conference on resilience and leadership, and they wanted me to speak. My first instinct was to decline. Public speaking, sharing a story so personal, so raw. But then I remembered what I'd been through. How for years I'd believed my worth was measured by what I gave, how much I endured. Maybe it was time to rewrite that narrative, not just for me, but for others who were still stuck in it. So I said yes. I spent weeks crafting my speech. I wrote and rewrote every word, trying to capture the years of invisible sacrifice, the quiet unraveling of my identity, and the defiant moment I finally said enough. The day of the conference, I stood before a room full of women, heart pounding. But as I began to speak, something shifted. My voice was steady. For years I thought my value came from how much I could give, how much I could carry for others. I paid the bills. I saved their store. I sacrificed until there was nothing left of me. But when I stood up for myself, when I said no more, I lost my family and I found my freedom. The applause afterward felt surreal, but the real reward came later. Women approached me, eyes shining, voices trembling, thanking me for saying what they'd never dared say aloud. Some had walked away from toxic parents. Others were still gathering the courage. We talked, we cried, and I realized my story wasn't just mine. It was theirs too. That moment sealed it. The lawsuit had cost me money, sleep, and the last fragile ties to my family. But it gave me something far more valuable, a life that was finally mine. The nonprofit campaign launched soon after and successfully funded 2 arts programs for local children. I kept painting, kept walking, kept writing. I was invited to speak at another conference in the spring. The more I spoke, the more I healed. My family remained silent. Leslie's store struggled without my support. My dad never called. My mom sent one last message saying she missed me, but I didn't answer. Not out of cruelty, just clarity. I could no longer be their safety net, because I'd learned something no courtroom ruling could teach. My worth wasn't defined by how much I gave to people who took me for granted. It was measured by the courage it took to choose myself. That evening, as I walked home beneath a sky ablaze with orange and pink, I felt a peace I hadn't known in years. The family I tried so hard to hold together was gone, but I wasn't broken. I was whole because I had finally chosen me. My life wasn't about saving others anymore. It was about living for myself. And that, I realized, was the truest freedom I could ever imagine.